Welcome to Wealthing Talks. I am your host, Alicia Castillo-Holly, bringing you real-life conversations from Silicon Valley or somewhere around the world. We will talk about disruptors, angel investments, venture capital, and of course, family offices. Join me along with my children, their families, friends, disruptors, and investors as we explore the fascinating world of creating wealth in a completely different and authentic way. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's an absolute pleasure to have Sage as a guest. Sage, thank you so much for spending this time with us.
My pleasure, Alicia. I'm really excited by the conversation.
Yeah. So tell us, what are you doing now? And how did you get to do this? How did you get here?
Yeah. So what we do now is we've weaponized generative AI for testing and training purposes so that people can encounter what the real attacks look like and know how to respond in order to protect themselves from this new wave of generative attacks that we've been seeing. And how did we get here? 3 years ago, I was in a DoD facility,
And tell
and
people what DoD is because they don't know.
oh yeah, it's now Department of War.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was a professor in the room who said something that stuck with me ever since. Um, he said that he was no longer afraid of quantum computing breaking everyone's passwords. He's now afraid of a large language model with reinforcement learning that can attack and learn from its attacks. And what most people don't know is that 91% of breaches aren't machine-to-machine attacks. They're human-to-human attacks, what's called social engineering. So that was very true back then, and it's even more true today. We've seen generative attacks explode by over 5,000% over the last several years, and there's new forms of attacks proliferating every day, where email used to be by and large what we all saw mostly, but now new text message threats, new voice deepfake threats, new video threats. Every day there's new form of attacks that are growing. And what we've done is we've created what I like to call the AlphaGo of cyber warfare, where we attack and we will learn from our attacks in a continuous self-learning model so that we can become the best at attacking and the best at defending. And over the past 3 years, we now have the largest data set of generated attacks in the world. So we've been able to not only create realistic attack simulations and have it annotated by real users, but also train novel defenses based off of that too.
So you turn it around
Exactly.
from learning how to attack to learning how the attackers attack.
And we have a lot of fun stories about turning it around there. This is a genuinely fun place to be working now.
Can you share with us one story
Absolutely.
that could be shared? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of deepfake voice attacks now. I think everyone has encountered that in the wild. But what we can do is we can actually deploy an agent on the other end to be able to simulate the callee, to be able to help drive more information from that bot. The interesting thing that we've seen is that, the attackers are early adopters in a lot of these technologies, and there aren't a lot of guardrails on that. So we can actually derive a lot of information from the attackers by keeping them on the line, by getting more and more information from their bots, and ultimately turning it back around on them.
Wow. Wow. I haven't been a victim of a scam, but I have a very large family. We're on my father's side, we're 50 cousins. That's a very, very large family. We can't keep track of them. And I remember when Facebook started, I didn't want to get into Facebook, but it was a great way to connect with everybody because we're all over the world. And one time, one of my cousins sent me a note. I had not seen him, I don't know, in 20 years or something. He sent me a note saying, I'm stranded in some weird country. I lost my wallet. I can't find the phone because it makes sense. I don't know the phone number. I remember the phone number of my home when I was a kid because you had to memorize it, but now it's on the phone.
Yes.
And it was very credible. So I called his mom, my aunt, and I said, I didn't know so-and-so was traveling. I thought he was somewhere there. And she's like, oh my gosh, let me call him. And so we were able to track it down. And I remember I'm in Silicon Valley. I went to the police and I reported them as phishing and all of that. But it was extremely credible,
Yes.
I could have fallen for that. And my sister's mother-in-law fell from a phone call, and she was at the time like 87, and they figured out my sister had a daughter from a previous marriage,
Mm,
but they didn't know my sister's daughter's name, but they called her mother-in-law and they said, hey, we got a call from your granddaughter that she's stranded and blah 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 blah, and but she doesn't want to tell her mom and dad, and so the mother-in-law called her son and said, I don't want to tell your wife this, but the girl is in trouble. And he's like, oh, no, 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 no. Let's figure this out. But they did get $3,000 from that woman.
oh, wow.
Yeah, and it
I'm
was
sorry to
all
hear that.
related. And I could check, I talk to my mom all the time about that, and especially senior people because they get scammed all the time. But when we were talking, well, for the record, I invested in the company. We invested in the company. We were very happy investors. But I remember when we were talking, you gave us like a demo
Mm,
for a phone scam,
mm.
and I have a hotel, and I was like, yep, we will fought for that. And that is really, really important. Yeah, that is a good job that you're doing. How do you think companies are reacting to that, to your offer?
Oh, well, the good news is that a lot of companies actually have requirements to have solutions like ours. So it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. And the companies that don't have requirements are quickly creating requirements to be able to do that. We also work with one of the largest cyber reinsurance firms in the world to be able to distribute to their SMB clients, because anyone who's holding cyber insurance has a requirement to have a tool like ours. And frankly, it's a hole in the market. People are not addressing these concerns right now. So it's a very novel approach to be able to help not only simulate the attacks, but also defend against them. Full end-to-end protection from these generative and deepfake attacks.
And have you been an entrepreneur before, or is this your first
Yes,
rodeo? Yeah.
this is
So
my
how
second
do you,
company.
huh?
This is my second company. It's my co-founder's third. And all the lessons learned from the first company are incredibly relevant here because we were building early AI bespoke models pre-generative, and then we grew into generative progressively. And the world changed when GPT-3 came out. That's the exact inflection point that we were like, where I had the epiphany around Jericho and then wanted to start the company.
And how does one become entrepreneur? Tell us a little bit about how do you move into that very exciting and challenging type of work?
Well, it's about not being able to forgive yourself if you don't take the opportunity that you see. And the opportunity that I saw the first time was early AI, specifically machines that could read and write. Now we have machines that can read and write at scale and with novel construction too. So at those different inflection points, if you read enough sci-fi, you kind of know where the world is headed and you know the opportunities that are going to change the world. And if you see one of those, you can't sleep at night. You have to do it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. How do you think we create wealth? What is your definition of that of wealth, and how do you think we're creating wealth? And how do you after you tell us the definition that you have, then go into how you are doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, there's a wealth specifically associated with knowledge and understanding the world around you, especially how these technologies are creating value. Um, and the really interesting thing to me, especially about the opportunity that we're pursuing today, is that it created opportunity initially for the attackers. But if you look at it from, wealth of knowledge perspective, you're also creating an incredible knowledge graph of what attacks are effective. And if a good guy does that first, we own that data and we'll be able to understand exactly how, these clients can be breached. And then we can build the protection to be able to protect them from those attacks. That is the origination of the company and the origination around our AlphaGo metaphor, where instead of playing Go against itself, it's essentially attacking itself so that it can become the best at attacking and the best at defending.
Just like a vaccine.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's a really apt metaphor. My brother does a lot of work with vaccines actually now using using AI and understanding a lot of the healthcare, and the metaphors there are incredibly apt.
Yeah. Well, that's the area where I come from.
Mhm.
Um, and so going into that path, you've done a lot of different things and you've learned a lot, and this is another very exciting opportunity. If you were to write yourself a letter to your younger self, like when you were, I don't know, a teenager, I have to be careful because you're among the youngest people that I've interviewed. So it's like, okay, I probably cannot say 20 years, but if
Yeah.
you were to write yourself your younger self a letter, what are the two or three things that you would tell yourself? If you're, dear Sage, I want you to know that I learned these. What are the things that you learned that you didn't know?
Yeah. The most important thing that I've learned is that people matter more than anything else, and they matter more today than ever before. Because, the automations that we employ, not only in our attack and defense, are being employed inside the company. So we actually have a relatively, small headcount. We are, well, there's massive financial benefits to that. Let's just leave it at that, which gives us a lot of autonomy and, the ability to not have to raise at certain intervals and things like that, just to leave it at that. But essentially now, more than ever before, the people matter a lot. And how you work with them and who you work with matter more than ever before, because it's going to be a tight-knit team that's using intense automations. I was working with our clawbots earlier today to be able to help deliver value at maximum scale. Um, from what we're seeing, this is the largest opportunity in the world, frankly, period. The core language models are being commodified relatively quickly. We have air gap version of all of our technologies. And what that essentially means is that the people operating them are going to be more valuable than ever before. So that's really the thing I would emphasize to my younger self and make sure that I understand moving forward too.
That's wonderful. I'm sure a lot of people are looking at these thinking, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that, I can. Yes, we can do a lot of things with AI, but people
Mhm.
matter more than anything else, especially now. So even
Yes.
fake people, even fake
Even
people.
fake people.
I
Well
went to a
said.
I went to a health tech conference last week, and they were talking about AI agents refusing claims.
Yes.
And you can be on the phone for hours and they're just using agents. They don't hire anybody now. But then there's a company that created an AI agent to counteract that. And so they keep going back and forth for hours. And as an investor, I was thinking, who would pay for that? I said, the telephone company should pay for that because it's time that they have and it's computing time. So I was just thinking, who benefits from that? But that's going to be very interesting to see it moving forward. Yeah. And as we progress along, is there any words of wisdom that you have for the younger generation or for the older generation? And
Hmm.
I'm going to make this in a context that is, I think, very interesting. Here in the US, people are extremely worried about AI making people lose their jobs.
Hmm.
In Europe, they're very excited about AI allowing people to get into independent
Hmm.
work, like solo entrepreneurs or just small businesses, just lifting their bar because services are so expensive there. What is your take on that? What are the words of encouragement or excitement, or the words of caution that you have for the people that want to consider being entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, this has been true at every technical wave, and this is the biggest one that I've ever seen. That it's the best time ever to be an entrepreneur, the best time ever to be an entrepreneur. The tools and the ability to build product has been totally the barriers have dropped. Anyone with access to an internet connection can now build out their own product. And my co-founder was saying that this is the age of the idea person. Someone who has an idea, they can now build out an MVP with vibe coding or with an AI factory. They can improve it. They can have a much smaller headcount. They don't need to raise as much capital to be able to build that. And distribution naturally comes from having the best product, from what we've seen. So that part is directly addressed as well. The barriers have dropped to
Hmm.
become an entrepreneur, and that should empower a lot of people. Um, and definitely I used to work in Japan, and there's a concept of the salary man who always goes to, they stay in their job for 50 years, their, entire career. Um, but I hopefully this will enable that salaryman to not be entirely dependent on that company. Hopefully that salaryman will be able to take what, the ideas that they have and be able to, create side projects or even just, create their own entrepreneurial venture. Because it's easier now than ever before.
Yeah, well, I'm an entrepreneur by heart, so yeah,
Yes.
I'm a curable optimist. It's like, oh, I can do that. Yeah, I'm gonna do that, and I get tons of ideas all the time. How do you think that's going to change the investment community?
I
Because
was just
there's some
talking.
very interesting things in that area too.
Oh, definitely, definitely. You can see like venture is adapting to this by consolidating interests, where like they are pouring money into fewer and fewer funds, into fewer and fewer companies, or getting more concentrated investment, um, and essentially de-risking. Because now, especially at the early stage, you need less money to go further than ever before. So maybe selling equity is not the best way to finance that company if you can become profitable very early. Maybe the best way is, through other vehicles. Um, and I think there will be a whole, people talk about pre-AI and post-AI companies. Um, there's many different interpretations of that, but the way that I think is most impactful for entrepreneurs is a post-AI company is not only building product with AI, but they're building the company with AI.
Yeah.
And we are an extreme version of that based off of our, automations, our number of customers, and our headcounts and our capabilities. But this is, again, if you read enough sci-fi, you know where the world is going. And this is exactly where the world is going. And I think the companies that have raised a lot of money and done the old traditional approach are going to have a very rude awakening soon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I also see that there's a lot of obsolescence, so
Yes.
which is sad because at least in science, in the healthcare or in agricultural, anything that has to do with biology, it's very time consuming, but it's also very expensive, and you need to wait time. And now with all these computer models, we just shift that, but
Mm,
we have to remember that those models are based on the hard work that somebody else did. So.
well said.
So if we don't have that, we cannot bring that. And I have a PhD in finance, but studying just life sciences. And I remember saying, and I finished in 2015, and I remember saying, we have forgotten to build the big blocks of science. And I predicted that we're going to have a lot of epidemics because we have forgotten how to build the blocks because everybody's just building on what we've learned before,
Mm,
which is exactly the same thing that is happening in AI. We spend a
exactly.
lot of time building the big blocks, and now everybody can benefit from the other things. Yeah.
Well, I remember when I had my first car, I could open the hood and I could see where everything was and I could figure it out.
Hmm.
By the time I had my second car, they had put a like plastic sheet on top of it with the car logo and stuff. You couldn't see anything and you couldn't fix it yourself. And now with Tesla, no one can fix their own car. You have to bring it in. And
Ah,
that sort of, again, progenitor metaphor of advancing technology being harder and harder for like, access and building is entirely true with it is bridge the gap from hardware to software now. Where a lot of the vibe coded products, it's harder to read the code for a human. And especially because we're SOC 2 Type 2 and because we do a lot of government work and federal work and DOW work, we need to make sure the code is legible. So to be able to do that, it's not an easy task. And it definitely requires a lot of forethought and planning to be able to make that accessible and understandable.
that's so interesting because my I think it was my second card or my third card was very old. But my dad had a very old car, and he
Uh-huh.
taught all of our kids. He disassembled the car, put it back together, and
Yes.
we learned to do that. Actually, I was the one that was enamored on mechanics, and I remember building up that car and just putting the wheels in the motor and trying to go around the block without a seat because
Mm.
he was just the same way. It was a Jeep. Then I had an old car and I could fix it, and people were so surprised because I could disassemble things. I can change the mangueras, I don't know, the hoses, and I can change. I mean, it was something I learned how to do when I was a kid. But you're absolutely right. I don't think I can do that. In the car that I have now, I will never get a flat tire because the tires are different. And
Yes.
and so yes, I'm thinking, oh, I'm never gonna, how is that gonna work? But yeah, and I went to the museum of the aeronautic air museum here in Silicon Valley, and they have an old model of the cockpit, and you can go and you can turn on the engine, and you can see all the buttons that were in the roof, and if you have the opportunity to do it with somebody there, I took my grandkids there. He said, if this happened, this is what this meant, and this,
Mm.
and you had to look at all of, and none of that exists anymore. So
Yes.
that's the way we're going. That is the way we're going. This is so interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, let me wrap up this with a very personal question that you have to answer. So you have no escape. So when I always end with this because I think we have a privilege to be alive. And when I was 13, I fell off a horse and I was in coma for a few
Mm.
days, and then I woke up and I realized, wow, this is a gift. This is gonna end. So this is a gift, and I always think, what am I going to be? Who am I? Who's my essence? Who's my soul, or whatever you want to call it? But who am I when I'm no longer here? So this is the question that I posed to my guest. Have you thought about who's Sage when Sage is no longer here?
Um, well, very I'll give my funny answer first, but very selfishly, I named my child after myself. I love my name. I don't think that's great. Um, there's there's a I'm going to quote a comic book actually,
Go for it,
just to
dude.
be super nerdy. Um, the only path to immortality is family. And unfortunately, the person who said that is the main villain of the Marvel series, Thanos. But I don't think
It's
it's
probably exactly the people that you don't want to have family.
exactly. So I don't think that's entirely true. I don't think that's entirely true. I think we can make the world a better place for our kids. And the way that I'm doing it is through Jericho, we're building something that I believe in, that I believe is necessary. And I don't see a future, frankly, like successfully without it. The the threats that we're seeing from AI are real. I'm not going to be dismissive of them in any way. And the number one threat that we're seeing is socially engineered threats that can directly affect also everything from national security, where we do a lot of our work, um, to specific individuals, well-being and health. Where I could cite so many examples. The Facebook chatbot that seems so real that someone made a trip to New York to see it, and then ultimately died along the way. Was just happened several months ago. It's absolutely tragic. Um, and I could count so many different stories around this. It is absolutely a threat. And the great news is that there are many, many ways to counter this threat. We are pursuing what I believe to be the greatest threat, but also essentially the greatest opportunity because of that. Where we have the mission to be able to protect the world from these new generative threats. And every day, that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what gets our team up in the morning. I just spent the last couple of days at Cyber Command. It's work I really believe in.
How did you name it, Jericho?
Back to Marvel. Jericho is
I
the
have the perfect
missile.
gift for you. I'm going to put it aside for Christmas. You'll be surprised.
I named it with my co-founder. Jericho is the name of the missile at the beginning of Iron Man, where you
Yeah.
fire it once and you never have to fire it again. And that's really the goal. It's like we can build a, next generation cyber warfare so that we don't have to worry about these things every day. We don't have to worry about our, grandparents falling for these scams or our kids falling for these scams. So that sort of next generation defense is why we built the company.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Sage, thank you so much for spending your time with us. It has been a pleasure.
My pleasure, Alicia.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. This is a true entrepreneur, absolutely passionate about what he's doing. We're very fortunate to have invested in the company, but I like his approach of making the world a safer place. And I always learn so much from our guests, but in this case, it makes me think a lot about the people that have been scammed, but also the companies that lose not only financial resources, which is how they started, but also lose very important information and can be attacked in many other ways. Thank you so much for being with us. This is your host, Alicia Castillo-Holly, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to our Wealthing Talks. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. To stay connected, visit us at wealthing.com. This is Alicia Castillo-Holly, your host, and until next time, yours in Wealthing.